So I wish that I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur before going to Harvard because I would have taken much more advantage of the resources there. I would say more than anything, the MBA gave me confidence. So the confidence to believe in myself and what I was capable of, just the language of business. I didn't study business in undergrad. I studied global health and economics. And so to be able to, talk about CPAs and profit loss and, just like thinking about things from a business perspective. I'd obviously gotten that in the consulting world, but to do it in an academic setting was just different. So that it really prepared me in terms of confidence. And then the other piece is just friendships. I mean, an MBA is like some of the best 2 years of your life. And I ended with just such close friends. And, people call it a network, but like for me, it really was just friendships. And to be able to turn to people with any question, knowing I have friends who work in all different types of industries and different roles is just feels really comforting.
You just heard one of the best reasons I know to get an MBA, and that's coming straight from the mouth of a Harvard MBA alum. I'm Angela Guido, the founder of Career Protocol, and today we're talking about whether an MBA is worth it. There are so many opinions out there about whether or not an MBA is worth it. Certainly Elon Musk doesn't think it is, but most of us who actually went to business school would respectfully disagree with Mr. Musk. We love sharing stories at Career Protocol, and today I am so excited to share with you the stories of Britt Williams Baker. She is a former client, a former senior instructor at Career Protocol, and someone who has taken an incredibly unusual path to phenomenal success post-MBA. I can't wait for you to hear how she's managed to achieve her dreams in a way that no one could have predicted.
My name is Britt Williams Baker, and I have had the pleasure of knowing Angela for a long while now. So a bit about my background, you kind of got the career overview. But one way I would sum it up, just to like bring a bit more color to it, is that I've had this mix of being both like super driven and an adventurer at the same time, like mixed into one body. And so when I graduated from Georgetown for undergrad, before working for Monitor Group in consulting in San Francisco, I first went to New Zealand and biked for 3 months working on organic farms. And then similarly, when I graduated from Harvard Business School, I spent the summer afterwards working for Backroads, an outdoor travel company in Wyoming. So guiding families on hiking and biking trips through the Tetons. Before joining a startup in San Francisco and really like hitting the tech scene hard. So this mix of like, trying to like make the most of my education while still making room for a lot of fun and adventure in my life has been a big theme.
So you can already tell that Britt's story is not going to be your run-of-the-mill story. There are a lot of opinions out there about whether an MBA is worth it or not. And one of the reigning opinions is, well, yes, an MBA is worth it, but only if you're trying to get one of the jobs that you can only get post-MBA, like going into management consulting or investment banking or possibly even product management or marketing or private equity. Following the tried and true post-MBA path to success. It's a common piece of advice. Skip the MBA unless you want one of those jobs. Britt's story ends in a phenomenal success. She has built a 7-figure business in less than a year. But before we get into all of that, let's hear the rest of the steps that she took towards achieving her passion, which by the way included a stop off at Career Protocol.
Yeah, I joined Career Protocol at an interesting point in life, which was the tech startup had run out of money. I'd been laid off and was wondering what to do, what next. And I was doing yoga teacher training and was still referring people to Angela because I had had such a great experience working with Angela, applying to business school myself. And Angela reached out and said, I'm starting my own thing. You have to join me. And so in this midst of like, what am I going to do next? Decided to join Career Protocol because one of the big themes in my life has just been helping people. Like, how can I help people in different ways? And with Career Protocol, it felt like, oh, I can really help people one-on-one in this like discovering who they are on their path to the MBA, which is such a unique time in anyone's life. I remember that time so fondly. So joined Career Protocol and had a really fun stint with Angela before, just realizing my passion for Dow Janes, which we'll get into, I think, in more detail coming up.
As you're listening to this, hopefully you can identify with a lot of what Britt is saying. Hopefully you too have a spirit of service. You have passions that don't necessarily fit into a clear corporate box. There are things that you want to explore and try with your life that may not necessarily fit with the picture of getting an MBA. But that doesn't mean that the MBA won't be worth it to you. When you're applying to business school and you're constructing your essays, there's always going to be a tension between what you think you want to do and the fact that you still want to explore. That's entirely normal. Almost everyone who pursues an MBA, especially women, are doing so to expand their horizons, to open up new doors that would otherwise be closed to them. That doesn't mean that you have to know exactly which door you want to walk through before you get to campus, but it does mean that if you can do a little bit of that research in advance, you're going to find the MBA that much more valuable. Britt has a lot of advice along these lines.
The most valuable piece of the pre-MBA experience is the self-reflection that it forces. So you, if you choose to, can learn a ton about yourself in this process with the reflections from your consultant and just really like noticing the patterns and the themes in your life that have led you to be the person that you are today. That knowing that going into business school is really helpful. I wish that YOMO existed when I went through it. So YOMO, for any of you who don't know, is this pre-MBA offering. So once you've gotten into school and you're waiting to go, it's a program that Career Protocol offers to really like prepare yourself for interviewing once you get to campus. Because once you get to campus, it is insane. Like there are companies that are interviewing within the first 2 months of you being like putting your foot on campus. And you're like, I don't even know what clubs to join yet. Like I haven't even been to a class yet. And like, they're expecting you to recruit. And so as much pre-work as you can do for that to really distill, like, do I want to go into consulting? Do I want to go into corporate finance? Do I want to do something totally different? Like getting clear on that before you go is immensely valuable. Because it helps determine like, you know, you're going to go to the club fair and there's going to be 150 clubs and you're like, do I join all of them? Like and you have to be so focused during your MBA. There is not enough time to do everything. So to like know exactly what it is you're going to take advantage of to support your career path. It's just like learning that as soon as you can is really helpful. I went in not knowing what I wanted to do. Like even in my essay, I was pretty vague. I was like, I really care about people. And so that was hard. It was hard to be in business school and like not know what it was that I was using it for. The clients I worked with who were like, this is what I want to do. And these are the clubs I'm going to be a part of to support me in getting there. Like that clarity is it's such a gift to know that going in. And of course, things change, but if you can at least have a direction, you can then like veer off it as necessary versus going in with like, there's not time to try everything during business school. So do not take that approach of like, I'm going to figure it out when I'm there because it's just too hard.
That's really, really good advice. It's advice that I myself did not follow as well. I also arrived on campus entirely clueless, not ready to take advantage of the resources at all. And had I known that entrepreneurship was in my future, much like Britt, I am sure I would have made very different choices when I was on campus. So the importance of reflecting on what you want to do post-MBA and how you want your career to unfold in those first couple of years pre-MBA before you get to campus, understanding what those first few years are going to look like post-MBA before you start, is super, super useful. I talk a lot about this on this channel. There are multiple MBA Monday videos about your career game plan and how important that is to your application and to your future. And I won't beat that drum again in this video. But on the other hand, I'm actually going to give you a word of comfort and just say, if you don't have all of that figured out, if you just aren't quite sure what the MBA is meant to be for in your career, that doesn't mean that it's not worth it for you. That doesn't mean that it's not going to totally accelerate your career in a great direction, enable you to make a pivot that you really want to make, and empower your leadership in a field of impact that's really important to you. You don't have to figure it all out. Britt's example and my example are really good evidence for the fact that you kind of can just show up on day one and it'll all work out in the end. But so that you can be spared what's the word I'm looking for? Torment, drama, trauma of FOMO in the beginning of your MBA while not knowing what to do, not being able to prioritize and make good choices about how to organize your MBA and take advantage of all the amazing resources there. I want to encourage you to start thinking about how. How are you going to put the MBA to work in your life in the first 2 to 4 years after you graduate so that you can really make progress against what matters to you? And you don't have to have it all figured out. Like I said, don't be intimidated if you're looking at this and you're thinking, gosh, I'm just like Britt, I don't know what I want to do. That's totally okay. That's where most people start. So if you're on the MBA journey, or if you're even contemplating the MBA journey, don't feel like you have to have that answer before you start, or frankly, even by the time you start your MBA. But do as much thinking as you can so that you're positioned to take best advantage of those resources while you're there. Much like Britt, I also discovered a passion for entrepreneurship much later, long after my MBA. And so a question that comes up for a lot of people is the MBA good for entrepreneurship? If you want to start your own business, is the MBA worth it? Now, I can actually make a really compelling argument on both sides of this. On the one hand, I wouldn't be an entrepreneur were it not for my MBA, or at least I would be significantly less successful as an entrepreneur. On the flip side, I think if you expect the MBA to give you all the tools you need for entrepreneurship, you're likely going to be disappointed. So the right answer for most people is entrepreneurship someday, something else in the short term. But whatever path you're headed down, whether you take a non-traditional route or a traditional route immediately post MBA, there's one thing that almost every MBA will agree they got out of their own program.
So I wish that I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur before going to Harvard, because I would have taken much more advantage of the resources there. I would have been part of the Impact Lab and, taken advantage of the Rock Center and all of the resources that they have available for entrepreneurs. And I just didn't know what I wanted to do then. I really thought I wanted to get into food and food tech. So I took agribusiness instead of like startup venture classes. So I feel like I kind of missed an opportunity there. I would say more than anything, the MBA gave me confidence. So the confidence to believe in myself and what I was capable of, just the language of business. I didn't study business in undergrad. I studied global health and economics. And so to be able to, talk about CPAs and profit loss and, just like thinking about things from a business perspective. I'd obviously gotten that in the consulting world, but to do it in an academic setting was just different. So that it really prepared me in terms of confidence. And then the other piece is just friendships. I mean, an MBA is like some of the best 2 years of your life. And I ended with just such close friends, and, people call it a network, but like for me, it really was just friendships. And to be able to turn to people with any question, knowing I have friends who work in all different types of industries and different roles is just feels really comforting.
Okay, so enough teasing. Now I'll let Britt tell you how she discovered her passion for helping women with their finances, and then how she built a business all around making specifically that kind of impact.
I just want to add too that yes, the MBA gave me the courage and confidence, but I just want to acknowledge that I'm privileged. like as a, white cisgender woman in our society who, grew up with enough money, like I had the privilege to be able to start my own thing. And I don't want to underrepresent that. So Dow Janes started in my living room, the living room you see behind me, right after business school. So I graduated from business school, moved back to the Bay Area, and had girlfriends just asking me about investing. They would say, like, how do you invest? And how do I start? And how do I know if I've saved enough for retirement? So all these questions that they assumed I learned during business school, which I didn't, but I did learn those things growing up. So, my dad taught me about personal finance from a very young age. My grandfather taught me to invest in the stock market. I've just been investing for a long time. And so I knew these things and wanted to share them. And so I would have like casual hangouts with friends where I would teach them about stocks and bonds and asset allocation and diversification. And people loved them. They were like, when's the next Dow Janes meeting? I can't wait. They just wanted a space of other women to talk about money. Money is so taboo. There's so much emotion wrapped up in it. So to have a space that was, a living room in a community felt really good to people, a place to ask questions and not have to just like scour the internet for answers and not know what to trust. So that's how it all initially started. And then, and I was working at Career Protocol at the time. So I had my side gigs going on. And eventually, so I did one session on budgeting where I brought in my friend, Lorianne, who I had worked with at Monitor Group, to teach a session on budgeting because she'd been through her own journey of budgeting and reframed it into this way that felt really empowering and all about choice and living into your values, like just turned budgeting on its head. And so she gave this presentation to my Dow Janes crew and they loved it. They ate it up. They were like, this is amazing. But by the next time we all met, no one had started a budget. There's just this like freeze that happens when it comes to personal finance. And I learned in that moment how much accountability is required, accountability and almost like hand holding, and decided to actually start a business based around this. So Lorianne and I, while I'm still at Career Protocol, she and I start these conversations just brainstorming what it's going to be. And we have conversations with all the original Dow Janes of what they want out of this offering. And we build our program, which is called the $1 Million Year. And it is a step-by-step curriculum that teaches people everything they need to know to become an investor, become a successful investor, no matter where you're starting from, whether you're in debt or don't have an emergency fund or need to make more money. We take you through the process to eventually become an investor and tackle things along the way, like your emotions and relationship to money. So we have this exercise where you write a letter to money and how you've treated it your whole life and how you intend to treat it going forward. So really bringing in this like holistic energy around money. So that's the program we developed and we launched it just over a year ago. So January of 2020, right before COVID. And it was all online from the beginning. So we didn't have to shift anything with COVID. We started with 40 people and then started expanding using Facebook ads. And we now have almost 1,000 women in our program about a year later.
I hope you agree with me that we need more people like Britt out there in the world, having an impact, building companies and organizations that really help people, that forward a set of values and that have an impact in this world. If you're watching this, I hope you have a vision for yourself of the kind of impact that you want to make and the path that you want to travel. And hopefully the example of this incredibly successful Harvard alum who followed a very unusual post-MBA path can also inspire you to realize that you don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to fit into a box. You can really just be true to yourself and find your own way to doing what matters to you. And if you have that vision, then the MBA can help. There's no question in my mind, in Britt's mind, and in the minds of countless other MBA graduates that the MBA is absolutely worth it. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and most importantly, leave us a comment. If this kind of content is valuable to you, then we're gonna make a lot more videos like this, but it would be just really useful to hear your feedback on what we're doing here. Okay, before we sign off, Let's hear one last piece of advice from Britt, the former chief fun officer at Career Protocol, on how to think about the MBA application journey itself if your confidence is flagging or if your inspiration is flagging in the middle of that long, long road to the MBA.
What else do I want to say about the Yeah, just like enjoy it. One of the things I said about applying to business school is that I would spend every Saturday morning working on my essays, and I would get up early before my housemates and I would go sit in our little sunroom and just write essays. And it was like me time and it was self-reflection time, and I really enjoyed the process. And so as much as you can, like, work on it when it works for you, the time of day that's like right for you for writing.
Straight from the mouth of Harvard, I can't even say Harvard now. It's like before I couldn't say any word but Harvard, now I can't even say Harvard. Okay, Harvard. Okay, you just heard one of the best reasons I know to get an MBA. No,